Hi, Silvana. Welcome to Network Capital. In this podcast, we try and understand why leaders do what they do. You had a particularly interesting career from law to deep tech, and we are excited to dive deep into it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Utkarsh, for having me. It's a great pleasure being here.
Thank you, Silvana. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself? What do you do today?
Yes, today I am the CEO of the Blockchain Challenge. So the Blockchain Challenge is a startup that was a result of my year at MIT. I'll dwell into that a little bit later. So what we're building is a global online community on blockchain enthusiasts and developers. And the cool thing about this, it's not only directed to coders and developers, which is a common misconception, but the whole idea is to make blockchain development skills available for everyone. So yeah, that's like the 15-second pitch of the startup.
That sounds exciting. So tell us about how you started your career and how did you pivot to deep tech? I believe you started as a lawyer, right?
Yes. The funny thing is that although I'm an attorney by training, yes, I went to law school in Colombia, in Bogota, Colombia. I was always into science because I've always been practicing as an intellectual property attorney. And moreover, I became a patent attorney. So I was in charge of patent applications that were focused on pharmaceuticals, biotechnology. So in a way, I've always been linked into science, and it's been a personal interest of me. I like to think of myself as a frustrated doctor. I've always wanted to study medicine. I don't know why I didn't pursue it, but it's a way of reivindicate myself into that frustration. So yes, I've always been into science. So the pivoting into deep tech was not such a strange concept to me. When I decided to go into MIT, I knew it was a challenge. Me being an attorney, not having an engineer background, but it's so well focused the masters that it's not hard to make that pivot in your career.
So let's try and understand why you decided to go to MIT. Could you talk me through the thought process that led you there?
Yes, so I've always been as I mentioned, I've always been into science and innovation. Part of what I was working on, I was the head of the patent department of a multinational intellectual property consultancy company. And one of the things I was leading were also innovation processes for universities and for companies. So I wanted to take all my practice a step further. I knew I had to build more tools into it. I knew I wanted to put some more to formalize some of the knowledge I had and, complement it. So MIT, I wanted to go to business school, but I didn't want to go to any business school. I wanted to go to one that was very much focused in innovation. And MIT seemed like the proper offering for that because, it's more than a business school. You can focus a lot, having all the environment and all the resources that MIT is worldwide known for. It was a great advantage, and it made all the sense in the world to pick that MBA because I was able to focus it into innovation management, which was my primary goal.
And to get into MIT, you must have thought through the kind of career pivot that you wanted to make. So when you wrote your application, what was your goal? What was the kind of vision that you painted for your own self? And did you follow through if you were to look back and see?
Yes. Actually, there's a nice duality to it because in a sense, I knew what my goal was, and so I wrote that on the application. It was basically what I was mentioning before, that I wanted to take my innovation management skills a level further. But also at the same time, and I also wrote this in my application, I in a way wanted to reset myself because I've always thought, and I was not mistaken on this, that you have to go to MIT with an open mind, else you were going to waste all the opportunities there. So in a way, I had my goals, but also I came with an open mind and see, where life was going to take me afterwards. For example, I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I thought, that after my year at MIT, I was probably going to find a job kind of on the same line of what I was doing. But, this is the part that, which I refer, I was having an open mind. I allowed myself to explore other skills, other capabilities, and it turns out to be that entrepreneurship was one of them. And I'm really glad I went through this path.
And what did you do during MIT? Like, what was the 1 or 2 years that you spent there? How did you go about exploring different paths, and how did you narrow down on what you wanted to do right after?
Well, I think one of the most valuable things at MIT and the most valuable assets actually is the people itself. So I talk to a lot of people. Diversity is something that is really, you come to learn the value of diversity there, because you get to talk to people, see what they were doing, how they wanted to focus afterwards, and it's a very fertile environment for you to explore different paths. You learn what you want or do not want to do. So I guess one of my biggest takes of the year at MIT was the people and talking to them. I mean, of course, the classes were amazing. The good thing is that you can shape up the program as you wish. I was very much focused into innovation. I took a couple of innovation classes and entrepreneurship, and also, I did the sustainability certificate, which allowed me to work 1 month at a New York-based company, which is called West Elm. It's very well known in the U.S. It's for interior designs and decoration. And we had to come up with a sustainability program for recycling rugs. So, it was a way to challenge myself and do something I've never done before and explore a subject that I've never been to before, which is sustainability. And I was like, yeah, it's good to have an open mind and to force myself to explore and do things I've never done before. So that's what I was always looking for at MIT, do things and take classes that I never thought I would take before. So that was a great, outcome of my year there.
So challenging yourself academically and taking up experiences that you hadn't done before, but following a hypothesis, like something that you were always interested in, which is innovation.
Yes.
Management. So what happened after? Once you graduated, what did you do?
Yeah, so after I graduated, I collaborated with a couple of friends on their startup, and then the blockchain theme was starting to pick up a lot on Boston. Actually, Boston wants to be known as the blockchain capital of the world. So even more than MIT, there's a huge ecosystem and innovation there. So after my year at MIT, I decided to explore that ecosystem. And my co-founder was going to MIT also at that time. And we started some conversations on blockchain, and we wanted, and so we explored the ecosystem on Kendall Square, which is like Boston's Silicon Valley. And we were always looking for use cases on blockchain. And we hardly found some other than cryptocurrency. So that's when the questions start arising, like, where are the use cases on blockchain? And how about if we later start to build some? So we began kind of exploring the idea. I explored the ecosystem a lot because there's not only MIT, you also have Harvard. You have amazing universities and amazing resources overall in the Boston entrepreneurial environment to explore. So I dedicated to do that after my year at MIT.
It's so important, right? The ecosystem that's just in the backyard, the universities, the streets, the kind of mentorship that's available. So
yes, it's really inspiring. And I want to be clear on something. Like, I could have taken a job like right away. And that would have been definitely the easier path. But I didn't feel comfortable in doing that because, after coming from MIT and resetting my mind in so different ways, I didn't want it to throw it all away by just going back to my status quo. I wanted to do really different things.
That's one of the goals of an MBA, right? If you want to try something new, explore and immerse yourself in a different setting, it's the right time to do it. So exactly. I'd love to hear how precisely did this company that you're heading right now, what were the early days like? What were some initial challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome them?
So I think we've been around formally for a year and a half, and I think we're still in our early days and still facing one of the challenges. So yeah, I have a lot to say about that. But mainly, I guess one of the biggest challenges is it's not even financial or things of the sort, but rather landing the business model and the idea. Because one of the mistakes that I make, and I guess every entrepreneur makes, is narrowing the activity, the activity that you want your startup to focus on, and that requires lots of discipline and lots of iteration and lots of great communication with your co-founders. So the first challenges, I guess, in the first early days is to be able to narrow down your idea or your business model, but also at the same time have the flexibility to pivot your idea and to adequate it to, while being loyal to your initial mission, also adequate it to the actual needs of the market, like to find a problem that really exists and build your solution around it. I think that's stage one of difficulties. And then stage two is then coming up with pilots, proof of works, proof of concepts, and test your idea. And you have to be really accurate to do that and really focused. And the third, I would guess, which is very obvious, is to finding the correct funding to do it. You do have lots of resources in the U.S. I think countries like in Latin America, countries like in Asia, we share the same difficulties in having access to these type of resources. So that's a thing that we definitely have to work on and make our countries conscious of and improve a lot.
So have you raised funds for your company?
Not yet, because actually I'm going to start the formal process of fundraising right now. My co-founder and I, we made the personal decision of bootstrapping. And because the way we conducted the pilots, we had sponsorships, we had other ways to fund those pilots. But now, since we already built the business model, we have a proven concept that works. Now we need to execute it and start building more on the tech, which means we have to invest on the tech. So now it's the proper time to start funding, and that's how we're going to be focusing on this first semester.
So how did you narrow down on the problem, and what's the problem and business model that you discovered for yourself?
Well, actually, the problem is that there's a scarcity on blockchain capabilities and on use cases. And what we're trying to fill in is those capabilities on the market on blockchain technology, on blockchain skills, because there are none. And we want to build those capabilities on the development on blockchain solutions based on real-life use cases, which means we also want to implement blockchain technology on a real basis. So that's one of the most pressing challenges that we have at the moment. So the problem is it's hard to find blockchain skills out there in the market, and the solutions is we want to provide those blockchain skills, that talent that we know it's out there, and it's not and by that I don't mean people that already know on blockchain, but it could be even someone that doesn't have a background on systems engineering or coding, but we can also talk about doctors, lawyers, sociologists, and different types of disciplines, because for achieving true blockchain implementation, you do need interdisciplinary skills for that, for people to be able to provide a whole perspective on the blockchain solution building and implementation.
That's so important. I mean, you've covered a critical point of essentially introducing intersectionality and multidisciplinary knowledge upskilling in a way. How are you going to make money?
That's a great question. I mean, so we have 3 different parties that are participating in our platform. So on the one hand, we have the members of the community, which is the people that get on board through the hackathons or through the workshops that we provide online. And on the other hand, you have companies that either want to implement blockchain solutions, want to build blockchain solutions or solve a particular technical problem. And then you have, on the other hand, you have blockchain technology platforms, which they build, the blockchain technology, and they need use cases and people to implement and test and tune their technology. So while it's a free-based model for the users, for the member of the communities, companies and blockchain technology platforms do have to pay either by sponsorship or license to be on board and to have access to the use cases and to the talent that's out there.
Got it. Just as a thought experiment, what's your 5-year vision? Like, where do you see your company going in 5 years?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, and I can answer it, but again, it has always the possibility of pivoting because I want to be flexible always. But the way I see it, I want this to be, I don't know if the right term would be an incubator or a blockchain accelerator. I want this to be a digital marketplace when you can find all sorts of talent and people connect in different parts of the world and build really high-level interactions for them, so they can do peer-to-peer reviewing. Even startups can come as a result of this peer-to-peer interaction. So I want this to be a really solid community around the world and diverse community, and I haven't gotten even into the gender equality issue yet, but I want this to be a community to have access for. Yeah, I'm gonna be referring to that in a few minutes. I want this to be a really, a really strong community for the people out there that only have a computer and the will to learn. I want this to be available for everyone that's interested in acquiring this, in making part of the future of work, which is learning and working through platforms. And yes, in terms of gender equality, one of the things we noticed on the first pilots that we launched is that the participation of women was somewhere between 14, 10, and even sometimes 7%, which is a very, very low number. And being my co-founder and I, both females, Latin American females, we wanted to increase the presence of women here. So we actually, the last pilot that we launched was directed, not exclusive, but intentionally directed to women. And we had over 280 participants, female participants in our hackathon, which made up for 88 participation. So there is interest. There's definitely all the capabilities out there. And we want this to be a platform that will also help empower women and that will bring a very safe and collaborative environment, encourage a collaborative environment of men and women working together in building these new technologies. So yes, we're putting an additional effort to definitely bring women on board because we need to. We need this to be an instrument for achieving gender equality on learning and implementing and building new technologies.
I think you said it perfectly. I read somewhere that today, if you look at the blockchain developers, they're only about 5% are women, and we really need not just developers, but the entire blockchain ecosystem to, be close to 50-50. So are there some things that you've observed that work well in attracting more women to the blockchain ecosystem? What have you seen that works? What doesn't work?
Well, I think, I'm still exploring, and I wish I would have a complete answer to that question, which is what we're trying to find out. But I guess the first thing that comes into my mind is that I think women need to feel safe and confident in an environment, that they will be listened to and that their ideas will be fully taken into account without patronizing or being condescending of any sort. And that's one of the mistakes that some affirmative actions make, to my opinion. So our real effort is headed towards, creating an environment in which there's none of that, in which women's ideas are fully respected and listened to because they are valuable, not because they're women. But you have to make people conscious on that. So what works is providing the safest environment. How? That's one of the things that we're trying to build as we go. But definitely exclusion, and by this I mean putting men aside, it's not the solution, on my honest opinion, because then you're just creating an artificial environment. The world is not like that. We have to achieve a world. Equality means both of us and all genders available having the same opportunities in the same environment. And that's what we want to achieve. So for me, exclusion of either side is just as wrong. We definitely want and need men into the mix, but in a safe environment. And what's a safe environment? That's what we're trying to build as we go, to give you an honest answer. I don't have all the factors, all the variables for that, but definitely that's something we're finding out as we go.
Absolutely. Talent is equally distributed, but opportunities are not. And I'm glad that you're trying to address it in your own way. What's your view on the role of mentorship in creating a more level playing field? How have some mentors shaped your career? And what advice do you have for young professionals, both men and women, trying to break into the blockchain ecosystem or deep tech at large?
The tech at large. So one of the things, yes, I have had different type of mentors. I've had, some of my professors at MIT. I mean, classes at MIT are good for a reason. You really have great teachers there. And once you go back to the materials and to the readings again, you get even more value of what you learned. So I haven't stopped studying at MIT. Actually, I took some additional classes last winter at MIT, and you can continue doing that. So I haven't stopped learning. I haven't, in a way, stopped going to MIT. I'm still learning from that. So professors are a great source of mentorship, and because you can go back and ask and share with them, and they'll give you feedback. Also, I have some personal access to some VCs in Silicon Valley, and their mentorship has been amazing. They have been, they have been wonderful in sharing and being generous with their time and knowledge. They give you honest feedback, and their feedback has always been like, you have to focus and narrow down your business model a bit more, then you can expand, but you have to focus. That has been their biggest, I think the biggest input they have given me. And my advice to the coming entrepreneurials, moreover in new technologies, is do not be afraid to explore and to launch your pilots. I would say launch without fear. And, however you want to run the pilots, do it, but just do it, and always try to aim for implementation of the new technologies. Like, try to land it into real and solid implementation, because you have to prove that that technology works under a certain circumstance or context. So I would say launch without any fear and try out and iterate with one another. For startups out there, I would say, there's some startups that are being, founded by one person. I would highly encourage to have, at least another co-founder, and it's always really valuable to iterate your idea once again. Like my co-founder and I do that all the time. In fact, that's a homework that we have later today. We're going to go through iteration number, 1,000. So always keep iterating your idea.
No, that's really well put. Let's explore the aspect of funding, VC, and a great degree, say in business like you have. Do you think what can VCs do to make it more accessible for women and minorities to access the available funding? Have you explored the space? What's your takeaway from the process of trying to fundraise, if at all? What advice have you got?
Yeah, so I came to an amazing female-focused VC. It's called Marian Ventures, and they have been amazing. And they have been very active into looking for female-led opportunities and female-led startups. And but I think they're the exception. I think VCs need overall to be more active into seeking these female-led companies. That's my intake. There's lots of efforts that you can, from a year from now, that you can start feeling they're being more intentional about it. But I think there's still a lot of work to do. I mean, if you look at the numbers, like female-led companies are still like, and I might be mistaken, but this is something like 5% of the overall funding that goes for startups in the U.S. So, there's still lots of active work to do.
Clearly. You're not from a tech background, even though you have an innovation management experience, a solid one at that. Do you have any suggestions for people who don't have any prior tech background? Would you still suggest they should try and launch? Because the key question that keeps coming back to us is that I'm not a techie. How can I love to want to get into the tech ecosystem. I just don't know how. What would you tell them?
Okay, I would tell them, yes, go ahead and launch. But I will also tell them something, which is what I actually do. So my co-founder, Natalie Jill, she is 100% techie. So if you don't have that background, my suggestion, I think the smartest thing you can do is find a co-founder that does have that background. So in my case with Natalie, it's a great combination because while I have the legal and I have the business background, although Natalie also has a very broad business background. She's also a highly technical person, and she understands the technology behind blockchain. She's a developer, and she's actually been named among the most influential Hispanics in technology. So that's a very important thing. Find a partner that has and in general, find a partner that has the skills that you don't have. Again, diversity is really important, and you have to be really wise about it. So not being a techie is definitely not an obstacle to build and launch a successful startup based on any new or any kind of technology whatsoever. But find the right co-founder that will be able to fill in the blanks for those things that you lack.
Got it. The last section of this podcast is focused on learning and personal productivity. So could you give a sense of how do you take time out in a day or a week to learn new things? And what are some things in a week that you do well, productivity-wise? And what are some things that you don't do well? What you wish you could do better to get most out of a day or a week?
Okay, that's a great question. So when you are working on, one of the difficulties on building your own startup is that you have all the time for yourself, and you have to be really disciplined about it. So and that's one of the things I struggled at first, because coming from a corporate world, I had office hours. I had to go to an office, things like that. I would suggest always have a balance on your work life and on your personal life. Definitely you have to put in some exercise, like physical exercise into it. For me, that has been the key. I personally am a fan of Muay Thai, which is Thailand's kickboxing national sport. I love it. It gives me a lot of focus, and it's a great way to challenge myself. I lost the fear of receiving and giving punches, and that was, I think it's besides going to MIT, it's been one of the greatest challenges I've forced myself to take. And I love it because it gives you so much focus. So I would say find a physical activity that will help you focus all that energy that you're going to have by being by yourself and then working at home. Find a space to build on yourself, to invest on yourself. I mean, wellness, it's a huge aspect of being an entrepreneur or enjoying the ride. I would say find a space at home that's dedicated to work, or if you can go to an office, also go to an office. And also try to set yourself some working hours. Try to destine those hours or make your own schedule. I would say that. Sometimes it's hard to follow. Sometimes you don't differentiate weekends from work days, and it's okay because it comes and goes in peaks. For example, when we're launching hackathons, Mondays, Sundays, Saturdays, it's the same for us. We have to be on demand for our participants, but it comes and goes. So, but I would say be really disciplined. Discipline is key for this process. And I've had to do a lot of learning myself. I mean, I'm 41 years old, and it takes, it's really hard sometimes. And I'm putting myself out there. It's really so hard sometimes because, it's up to you. There's no one supervising you or telling you, but the results will come bite you back if you don't have an order and a discipline to things.
Got it. If you were to give one piece of advice to your 18-year-old self and one to your 30-year-old self, what would you say?
To my 18-year-old self, I would say start practicing Muay Thai. For real. I would say that because the focus I've found in that discipline, I wish I could have found earlier. I would say to myself, don't pay much attention to the limitations that you thought you had, that you were taught to have by society, by school teachers, because none of that is real, and it's never too late. So I would say go ahead without any fear, do whatever. There is no such thing as limitation of any kind. So don't be afraid and do whatever the hell you want to do.
And to your 30-year-old self?
To my 30-year-old self, what would I say to my 30-year-old self? Save more money. That's definitely something I would say to myself. Now that we're being bootstrapped, I would definitely say, listen, even if you're working on a salary, you never know whenever the entrepreneurship bug is going to bite you. So, try to save some money, whether you want to build your own stuff later on or you want to invest later on. So that's what I would tell my 30-year-old self.
So the last question that we have for you is that if there is one book or one movie or one song that has made an impression on you, could you share what that is? A book, a song, or a movie, or anything that you keep going back to for inspiration or perspective?
Oh, I think this is the hardest question in the podcast, because to pick a book or a movie or a song is like picking your favorite child. Let me think about it. A book that inspires me. There's so many. Well, there's a book that I'm actually and perhaps this is why I'm naming it right now. It's called The Reconnection by Eric Pearl. It's a little bit on metaphysics, but it talks about limits and how to focus your attention to things, and how physics and science and religion come together. I don't know if that's totally related to being inspired in entrepreneurship, but it really makes you think
that left the mark. It doesn't
beyond your boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I would say definitely that book and music. Oh my God, I love music so much. In a way, because of it doesn't have any lyrics, but it's all been with me since I've been 15 years old. I like it's called Symphony La Pathetic by Tchaikovsky. It's been stuck with me since I was like 15 years old, and there's of course no lyrics to it, but the structure of that composition, the mood that sets you in, I don't know, it connects with me in so many levels. So yes, that's one of the most compelling and haunting tunes I've ever heard. And movie, I actually remember one. It's not that popular. It's called A Ghost. It's a movie called A Ghost Story, and it's very impactful in terms of how mortal and how we're so passing by on this world. It has Rooney Mara and Casey Affleck as their main characters. I would definitely that movie shocked me a lot. So I highly recommend it, and the soundtrack is amazing. So yes.
Silvana, it's been such a delight talking to you. Thank you for your time. This podcast will go out to 100,000 odd people, and I'm sure they'll all be inspired. We deeply appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Utkarsh. It's been a great pleasure. I can't say how much I'm in love with India. I've been recently there, as you know. We met there. And, India has given me so many things in so many ways that I only want to give back. And to anyone that wants to connect with me, I'm more than happy to do so. We can connect on Instagram. I'll send you later my Instagram so we can connect. I'll be happy to mentor or provide any type of guidance to anyone out there. And yes, I only have a big thank you to you and to India, because I'm absolutely in love with that country and to all the culture and the great food that there is to it. So thank you.
There's a thriving blockchain ecosystem here, so I'm sure you'll have a lot more. Food and blockchain often go well together.
That would be amazing. I really hope to contribute to the development of the blockchain ecosystem in India. And please, anything anyone out there needs, I'm more than happy to connect. So thank you. Thank you, everyone.
We'll host you for a masterclass soon.
Absolutely. Would love to.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Okay.